All right, guys, so last time I did a lot of lower body, so ankle and hip. This time I want to go over the shoulders. So the shoulders are something that get really tied up, really locked into place, just from, again, sitting all day, or looking down, texting, being on our phones all the time, sitting at a desk, or just driving a lot. So I've noticed when I start to drive more than just my regular commute, like this weekend, for example, I drove down to Miami, so it was about 3.5 hours for me. Took about 7 hours of sitting. So my shoulders, I can tell that they are really tight just from being in a locked position, pronated just like this, and internally rotated. So I want to free those up. I start with this guy, okay? This guy's really, again, like my sniper rifle. I kind of get in the muscle fiber, move the muscle around, loosen this up, and that'll be our starting point, okay? So for our shoulders, I like to really hit the anterior delt or the pec major, all right? And I've got a yoga block here, and you don't need to do it on a yoga block. For me, it just hits a little bit harder. If you want to start for your first time, do it on the floor, but make sure it's a hardwood or a hard surface. And we've got a ball about this size. That's a lacrosse ball. You can use a tennis ball or a baseball, but lacrosse balls are really good, nice and firm, and they're just the right size. So what I'll do is, I'm gonna lay down, and then I'll put this guy right around this area. So in my front of my shoulder, the anterior delt, or around that pec major where it starts to go into that shoulder. So I'll lean into it, and I'm just gonna keep my thumb up, and I'm gonna go back and forth just like this. And again, I can adjust this guy if I need to. Good, okay, so as you go up and down, you'll start to feel those spots. And if I start to bend my elbow, rather than bringing it all the way around and keeping that elbow straight, that means I've hit my sticking point. So I wanna make sure I keep my arm straight the whole time, because as soon as if I bend that, I'm not really hitting it anymore. So I'm gonna go ahead, do that 20 times on each side, and then we'll hit another spot. All right, guys, this is the next part of just kind of releasing that shoulder. So this is going along the same lines of, same concept of how that trigger pointing goes, okay? So this time, I'm just gonna use a bar, okay? And the help of a 25-pound plate. If you're just starting out, I wouldn't go this heavy. I'm used to it, so I can kind of dig in a little bit more. Maybe 10, 15 pounds just to start with, and then work your way up. So what I want to do is, I want to get underneath of that pec major, okay? So there's a pec major and a pec minor. And so all of that kind of attaches up here, and it kind of, again, works with this motion of going in and the internal rotation. So I want to make sure that this is freed up on both spots, major and minor in the pectoral area, and we really want to dig in using this bar. So what I'll do is, I'm gonna go over, put my arm on here, okay? And I want to kind of put it so it's not quite just on my pec, but more so running across and down there. So I kind of hit that outside, okay? And I just let my elbow and my hand get pulled down, and I can take it going forward and backwards, just a little bit of movement, okay? 10 times, and I can lean back and lean over, this way, forward, but I just kind of work it and get in there. And then I can go out and in, okay? Again, 10 times. This is really starting to dig in there, I can feel it. Just take your time, sink into it. And then we can go clockwise and then counterclockwise. We can do 10 on each of these movements. So front to back, side to side, and clockwise and counterclockwise. So we've got the pecs. They are all trigger pointed and ready to be stretched out, okay? So I use this bar for a specific reason. So I like to hit, like I said, with the trigger point ball, using that method with the plate on the bar, smashing the pec, major and the minor. And then this kind of rounds it out, okay? So I want to hit that entire shoulder complex back here and everything that attaches to it. So that means, again, here and the shoulder, when you look at any kind of anatomy chart, the bicep runs up to the shoulder joint through the humerus, okay? So a lot of times if we are in this shoulder extension, okay, or excuse me, shoulder flexion. So bring your hands up above you, that's flexion. Bring it behind you is extension, okay? So a lot of times we do overhead pressing, or our hands are like this in the majority of our life. So we want to be able to reverse that and kind of work the other side. It's like working a muscle group. We don't just want to do one motion or movement all the time. We've got to make sure there's balance and symmetry between it. So that's why I like to do this a lot. It helps with breathing, and breathing is super important and underrated. I've got a lot of stuff coming out for that. I think that's going to really help you guys. It's not really talked about in mainstream fitness or conditioning, and I think that's such a huge portion of something that's missing from motocross training. But I diverge into little tangents there. So let's get started. Super easy to administer. All I'm going to do is have my palms facing down, okay? The closer I go in, the more difficult it is. The further out I go with my hands, the easier this will be, okay? I want to make sure that I have a slight bend in my elbows because I don't want to lock them out completely and kind of irritate those elbows. And then I don't want to dump my shoulders forward. I want to make sure they're pinned back, shoulder blades pinching together. I step out, getting a good stretch, and then I will sink down. Okay? So I put my knee on the ground, and I can definitely feel this in my chest, my biceps, and my shoulders. But this shoulder extension is great. Okay? We spend most of our time during the day in that shoulder flexion. Do a lot of overhead or pressing, but it's always good to do. Okay, we can ease back into it. Okay, when we start feeling comfortable. But again, spend a total time of about 2 minutes here. That's the time I'm looking for. All right. Play around with it. Sink back. Sit up. Okay. Either way, just protect those shoulders, keeping them pinned back, and enjoy.